The Chong Fat Si Mansion management explored and experimented with several business models over the years. The core aim for the management was to embrace changes while taking pains to uphold the spirit and understanding of the place and its relevance to the community. The business models implemented had their strengths and weaknesses. Some worked well until unexpected challenges emerged, while others did not work out. The current business model comes with its own set of challenges.
I like to call it an act of faith because that's what it was. The need to restore something that we thought was very, very special. And we're not quite entirely sure what we were getting into. There was some kind of tourism funding, but basically it was savings, it was bank loans, it was, I like to say, hooked up to our eyeballs. And then I think worse than that, there was actually nothing in place to help in terms of restoration and conservation expertise. So we were very open to help and not shy about asking for that help in terms of expertise. And I must admit, there were many people who helped us.
In that sense, there was no what we will call heritage protection laws in existence. So that was the negative part of it. But in fact, it was the biggest cause of all our problems at that time. I think there was no conscious effort to do branding per se, right? Because first of all, we hadn't landed on the idea that it would be a homestay. And then when they launched it in 2000, lo and behold, we were told, you can also apply, So we applied out of hope and faith, not knowing that we actually had a project of great impact and something that they would actually see as a good benchmark. So we won it. And that was the turning point of our whole brand experience, right? So sometimes you do things not consciously in order to brand yourself, but you know that by getting certain things like awards or recognition allows you to be placed on a pedestal from which you can then articulate your values, your vision, etc., etc. Once you start to think of the business model, you see it as an adjunct to that business model. So to have it is better than not to have it. But coming back to the tours, I think if I recall correctly, at that point in time, no other heritage building, private, in Penang, actually offered a tour, a guided tour. Now it seems so obvious and you go travel all around the world and everybody does it. But at that time, nobody did it. So in fact, we created a working financial model for people to follow. And we indirectly forced people to look at what we call interpretation, which, it's an unheard of word. But in UNESCO, it's a very strong criteria. So in fact, we set yet another benchmark for people to follow. And proud to say that people still comment that ours is the best. So because it's informed and really in-depth tour, right? Whereas if you go to other places or you take a general tour of Penang, they'll bring you to many different heritage sites and it's just a very perfunctory walk in, walk out, So we created a different paradigm and posed that challenge to other sites.
My approach to interpretation is that when you visit an important historic site, without good interpretation, you will leave it. One, you will not be touched. Number two, you leave it knowing very little more than when you first arrived. And you would have lost an amazing opportunity to actually inspire somebody, to make them feel that, I'm so glad I came. Whereas now, with social media, with, amazing photography, with videos, with everything, you don't actually need to go and visit a site. No? You just look at it. Even with events, somebody wants to have a wedding of 300 people, would make us a huge, chunk of money. We say no. 200 people, no. 150 people, no. In the past, we've coped with this by spreading them out. Outside, inside, upstairs, downstairs, we spread them out. Then we decided one day, and we've had huge battles with our managers who have, but yes, we can, why not? We can do it. You're crazy or something, you can make so much money and you don't want to. I said, but you must understand, the house cannot take that number of people.
The driving idea, which I had and most probably Lindy had, is that if ever we had to create things like a hotel or whatever, it must be a place that we want to go back to again and again and again. And as we travel as students to various parts of, the Mediterranean and things like that, we found that when we went to these very cheap pensions, it was the family that were the people who run the place, but very friendly, there was great comradeship among the people who stayed there. I remember that place, I remember the experience, and I want to go back. Whereas if you compare it to these normal hotels, there's no recognition, there's no friendly face in a really sincere form, and it's a cookie cutter sort of design, and nobody remembers you. And you could visit it 5-6 times in your life and they still don't remember you. That was in the old days. So that's all we knew, right? And so I said, we'll do something like a bed and breakfast, where the family runs the place and we open it up in that sense. And so that's why we looked for a couple, to represent that idea of home. Right? And it worked out to our satisfaction at that point in time. And I think also, we didn't want to get involved in what was required if you had created a hotel per se. You would need what? You would need to provide a restaurant. You would need to provide TV in your rooms. Most probably a swimming pool. So we had none of that. And we thought, okay, we give you breakfast and out you go, like every other B&B. And then we don't have to worry anymore until you come back. So it gave us a lot of breathing space, and it kept our costs down. Because that time also, we didn't have that much funds to really do a high-end hotel operation. So it's all about expediency, working within your means, and getting the brand values into the place that you really wanted. That's why it became a heritage homestead as opposed to bed and breakfast.
Same concept. And don't forget, we were still bruised from the damages from the piling, and it had taken us years. This happened in 96. They finished piling at the end of 96. We didn't start again. We had to look for more funds to put in the plumbing, to put in the electricals, to put in all the things that are required to actually make it a working building. The restoration, the fabrics had been done. And in effect, as Lawrence says, now one would never begin anything without documenting. We did not document that well in those days. And in fact, when the piling took place, nothing was in place for us to appeal to. And they tried very hard to say this was an old building, and of course it has cracks. How can an old building not have cracks? And we were saying, but there were no cracks before you started your piling. And we were very fortunate. That's why it's been expeditious in many ways. We were very fortunate that we had photographed the building extensively in order to submit it for the PAM Awards for Conservation first year. And we won the award for Most Excellent Project for Conservation. So the house was fully photographed with the fabric restored. That means painting, ceilings, walls, roofs, everything. So we said, but this was before you started your piling, and now you've started piling. I mean, we won't go into it because it'll take us a day. I mean, we're talking 48 hours after they started piling, the house started to crack. And it continued to crack.
But this is only a corollary to the idea of the heritage homestay.
Yeah. So, this took a while for us. We were so involved in fighting this that it took us a while to get back to, making this place work. So by the time, as Lauren says, we were limited in funds, in everything else. And also, I use the word bruised. We were bruised. I like to say our hair started to turn white then, but that was when the biggest challenges came. So in 2001, it was very mild start.
Well, I think that's the most obvious shift in the paradigm. As mentioned earlier by Lindy, we have always had this tacit obligation to demonstrate that heritage pays. So when we restored the building and we got kudos for it, it pays, right, to a certain degree. Then when we started the heritage homestay and people say, oh, okay, they found a way to make money and to be sustainable in a building that we never expected that could create this sort of economy. And so when the newer hotels came on the market, we felt the pressure again to say, we have to show that we can do it better. So it was really a dual battle for us. One is to, get a better financial model into the place, and two, to keep the heritage flag flying on a global platform, at a global level, rather than just be one of the great places in Penang, but that's it. So it was this obligation as well. I spent a year talking to them, trying to understand their corporate culture, looking at what they had created, on a very personal level, because it was a very small operations with not many outlets, but each one very successful. And so we knew that if we chose to go with them, we would also have to step back and accept a lot of change. But I think the thing that really was the nail in the coffin was the emergence of the OTAs. At first, it was just a coder, and then Booking.com came on strong. Then everything started to pivot to the OTAs as opposed to, travel agents per se. In the agreement we had with them, there were very specific performance clauses. I thought I had a very good agreement signed up, but in the end, even that couldn't be fulfilled. So, given this situation, I look at you, you look at me, call it a day lah. No animosity, nothing. Just it's not working out. No, actually, we fulfilled our part. They said you have to renovate all the rooms. I put $1.5 million to renovate all the rooms
to their specifications.
So that was a big investment on our part. But the other terms were actually very favorable, because in the end, you come with this very thick document of what you pay, what I pay. I do a marketing, but it's in this region, it's part of mine, so it became very, very convoluted, right? So we both agreed to simplify. So in the end, he offered, we take no marketing fees from you, but you give us this percentage. I say, okay, but I have a bottom line. I'm already earning so much by doing nothing. I just stand on my two feet, market the place, and I get this profit. If you hit this figure, you don't get a cent. Anything above that line, you get a percentage. And they thought, okay. So we didn't have to pay for marketing, we didn't pay anything, I just paid for the renovation. In the end, it was about dollars and cents. That made the difference. But it had already shifted.
There's no going back.
It had already shifted, and I think nobody in the hospitality industry who is embedded in existing systems would believe that. But for some people who are already very conversant with digital tools, the digital landscape, people who are very good at creating apps, and they know how to invent. Whereas most hoteliers are already so old school, they can't invent any new system. So I think for someone as nimble as this this person was who ran the boutique hotels, he traveled a lot. He also didn't see it coming. And I think if he had seen it coming, he would have also pivoted and changed the operating approach. It's only when you really said, every room is sold by them, we don't even get our own rooms, and we don't even keep our own commissions. Huh?
Hits you.
No, then you do. Then all my marketing is for waste.
Oh, and the other thing they had, which they brought in, was that they were part of a very high, what do you call them? Relais and Chateau, these kinds of very European-based groups.
It's like Michelin star.
Like Michelin star groups that form together, and then they have very standard, you must have a 5-star restaurant, you must have this wine, you must have, and they're all part of a group that kind of like help each other kind of thing,
Cross-marketed each other.
Yeah, and I had to join that because that was what they were part of. And then they broke off from that, formed another more Asian-based group. But it still carried that same kind of Michelin star. You're either in or out, And they're supposed to sell rooms that way, meaning that people, they have a captive market that travels, and only stays in hotels of that standard.
So the question that arises is that, do you rely on existing status models, reputation models, global as they are, to validate who you are and the quality of your establishment? Or do you look for new models to replace all of this very traditional, antiquated, perhaps very old world way of thinking? Right? But given all that, sometimes I ask myself, did I make the wrong judgment call? Because if I had an opportunity to look at their outlets, all very exclusive. They have a beautiful resort in Tioman. All the rich Italians, everything, fly in, it's 100% full during summer. But exclusive, you get on a boat, you go there and nobody comes to the island. The outlets in KL, the same thing. So if I recognize that they had this one characteristic, who would have been that? So why would they entertain the riffraff? They, on the other hand, understood our characteristics and said, we'll take a risk. So sometimes you think about it. If your behavior and my behavior, your values and my values are so different, although our objectives are the same, and although we are in the same boutique sort of frame of mind, are we really suitable for each other in terms of the management and operating systems? So I can't blame them and they can't blame us. It's just that maybe that was their real selling point. And if they cannot execute that selling point, then we are stopping them from performing.
We become a liability then.
So it was just... So the lesson learned is, if you cannot find someone who is exclusively similar to your thinking in relation to the activation of a very unique heritage destination, I think you'd better think about it again, and maybe you should have second thoughts. Because the incompatibility of heritage use, for those of us who are, in the heritage line, can become the killing point. And I always quote this thing of how, if you had a Chinese temple and you want to turn it into a badminton hall, you can. You cut away all the columns, put a steel structure and support the roof, you can have a nice badminton hall. But would you do that? You cannot do that to a heritage building, and everybody will tell you it's not right. So in a sense, compatibility with use and with values becomes very important when you undertake conservation of building and adaptive reuse of a building, right? And even this small little thing becomes a lesson.
The end of the luxury boutique hotel venture forces the Low family to look at new and innovative methods to tackle challenges brought on by rapid developments in the hospitality industry. Many of these challenges were unforeseen and required the attention of managers with specific and unconventional skill sets. What would Lawrence have to do to address the paradigm shift in the industry?